the revolution ended on February 11, and in March I went there because there was a referendum on a constitution, some amendment in the constitution, whether or not change or not, and it was like a big fuss about it. So I really wanted to be there during that referendum in March. And then I went back again in November during the parliament election, November, December. And when I was there, I witnessed a lot of protests. There was a lot of clashes, Mohammed Mahmoud clashes. And during the whole election, the parliament election, and all the corruption that's still in place, and how Muslim Brotherhood manipulated people to kind of win seats in the parliament. And I filmed with activists about the reaction to what Muslim Brotherhood doing. They're using the same tactic the old regime was using, which is bribing and fear, blackmailing people, using religion to kind of make some kind of incentive or make people fear that if they don't vote for them, they won't go to heaven, which I thought like it was really ridiculous. You know, they went a little bit overboard with that one.
How did you choose because it's very interesting, the folks that you chose seem to really be from a wide variety of points of view. How did you choose those folks?
With Egypt, the story behind the revolution, I connect with activists online because I was watching what they're saying on Facebook, and they connect me with other activists they know. They're more active than others, and I just met with them before the interview, heard their story, and then I start filming right away. Unfortunately, not everybody I filmed agreed to be in the movie because they were really afraid for their life. Some of them, they really felt that the regime is not really over. Just Mubarak left the regime, but the regime is still intact, and they were really afraid to be targeted. Then in November, when I went back in November to film the protest and the parliament, I got to know more activists through these connections. So the people in the first film, they come back in the second film and tell me their experience after the revolution, what it looked like, and how Egypt changed, and how everything kind of like moved from before revolution, during revolution, and after revolution, and their insight on who gonna win the parliament and their reaction to the parliament election. And I'm actually going again in June to film a little bit like the ending of my next movie, which called Stories from Tahrir, and you can find all the information on that at behindtherevolution.com. On Facebook, if you search for Behind the Revolution, you will get directly to me. You can contact me, you can add me, and you can even find my Twitter, which is Jan25 Revolution. But if you go on behindtherevolution.com, you'll find all the information. And if you didn't come to any of my screening, you can see the movie online at indieflix.com also.
Even though they were being forced into side streets and being attacked, they kept fighting down there. They weren't going to lose their position.
You believe in democracy?
But when the people here will have the culture of democracy.
There was a lot of factors that pushed in the way of dropping Mubarak. He was one of these factors.
I don't think that revolution ever happened in cyberspace. They need public space. The Tahrir Square provided that.
This is a historic moment. I urge you to use the word revolt and uprising and revolution.
Hosni Mubarak was gone.
I was like, oh my God, he left. Oh my God, he left. It was such an unbelievable.
Oh my God. The sticky person was out.
What do you say in Arabic?
لزقة.
It was different the first trip than the second trip. The first trip, I didn't realize that the protest was still going on. There was a lot of people with a special interest. They were still protesting about like little thing, raise in salaries and lowering rent, some more riot for the hand cap. So it was like small group protesting about different things, not really for the whole country. They were protesting for the special interest, which is okay. You know, that's what democracy for. You know, you go protest and try to ask for what's rightfully yours. So I was filming them and talking to them, and the military really, at this time, they were really in control, and they really didn't like me talking to anybody. So I got detained for like 6 hours.
What was that like? How did that happen?
It was scary because, you know, while I'm talking to somebody like you're talking to me right now, I saw the police was, you know, the military police kind of closing on me, and I know they're coming for me, but the guy I was interviewing, he was very eloquent, and I really wanted to get every bit of what he's saying, that by the time he stopped talking, I was already, you know, the military was all over me, and they dragged me into their offices. Thank God I had a shoes rose. Kangaroos, they have like a little bucket, so I changed my card. They tried to look like, what is on the camera, what you were doing, like what are you filming? And I'm like, there's nothing, I was just talking to somebody, I wasn't filming anything. And I have like a DSLR, so it really doesn't look like a video camera. So they were kind of really weirded out. So here I am, I'm talking to somebody, I'm pointing the camera at him, but they can't see what I was doing on the camera because the card was outside of the camera. So I love those shoes, the Kangaroos. I have it. ROOS. Yes, that's a little plug for these people. They were really popular in the 80s. So anyway, after 6 hours of like good cop, bad cop, I finally, you know.
What do they want to know? I mean, you're an American citizen, or do you have?
Yeah, I'm an American citizen. I have American passport. Who I'm with, who I'm working with. Of course, I don't have any like journalism, any clearance or anything. I'm not a journalist. You know, I don't work for a specific company. I'm doing, you know, my own thing. You know, I'm an independent filmmaker, so I don't have any card on me or any union thing. Or so they were really, they didn't know what I was there doing, so they were really curious about that. Of course, I speak Arabic, and it's kind of broken Arabic. It was like the second day I was there in Egypt. That happened right away in March 2011. So they just didn't get what I was doing there and why I was talking to these people, who I am, why, you know, I have an American passport, but still I'm talking Arabic, and it just like, and after 6 hours of just interrogations, they kind of let me go. And that was not a big deal. In November, when I returned, in November, there was a lot of clashes in Mohammed Mahmoud. It's off Tahrir Square, next to the AUC, the American University in Cairo. There was a lot of clashes between the state police and the protester, because the protester wanted to stay and have a sit-in or occupy style to kind of get their demand. And because it was just right around the same time where the parliament election was going on, so they really wanted to clear the square, and they beat people up, they tear gassed them, they shot them with live ammunition, rubber bullet. I mean, I saw all this stuff, and I have like a lot of footage of this. It was really scary. You feel like you are on the front line of some kind of war. And at some point you can't see anything because they can tear gas you, and it just, everything turned to white. You can't see anything, your eyes is watery, you can't breathe. It just like, it really paralyzes you. It's absolutely terrible, and I urge any government to stop using tear gas on their people. It's the worst. So anyway, after a week of like clashes, I was like filming in the square, in Tahrir Square, with activists and stuff. And one day, I think it was the 25th in the afternoon, I was there to meet with one of the activists. I met with him, I had an interview. He left, and I was walking in Tahrir Square, and I noticed like people were fighting, and I wasn't sure what they're fighting for. So I have my camera on me, and I was looking to see what's going on with this fight. Before I know it, I was just also attacked like out of nowhere. Just like people start coming, grabbing the camera, beating me up. Some guy beat me with a stick. I was trying to, you know, cover my face, and he hit me here, and really, it didn't do any fracture, but kind of bruised my hand, and it still kind of hurt. And that's besides all the tear gas I was, you know, breathing through the whole thing. I was lucky enough because in a circle in the middle of the square, that's where all the activists kind of like erect tent, and they're staying there and they're hanging out. And because I'm really tall, my friend kind of noticed me in the middle of this big fiasco, and they came to my rescue like a couple minutes later, and thank God for that, because I know during that week a couple of other journalists, they were actually attacked before us. Their camera was smashed, they were beaten really bad, and by the time we got to them to kind of like take them out of the situation, it was too late because they didn't have their equipment anymore. I'm sorry for me, it still fucking hurt as hell, man. Anybody, when they squeeze my hand, and I always forget because there is no constant pain, but when you shake somebody's hand and if you really squeeze your finger together, it just like, it bring it all back and it really hurt.
Any knowledge in Egypt of what's happening here with the Occupy movement, and that there's any supportive feeling in the United States from the public here?
Absolutely. Well, the interesting thing is, like, when Occupy first happened in Wisconsin, right? Because of all the union and stuff. Sure. And it was really amazing because a lot of activists heard about it in Egypt and heard that here the media was saying that it was inspired by the Arab Spring and stuff. And then in the summer, when Occupy Wall Street started and escalated across the United States, and we heard like the specific demand for the Occupy Wall Street, people were really surprised to see that people in the United States, you know, having the same problem. I mean, the social justice here is just really terrible too, because, you know, you get the 99% and the 1% who getting everything. And that's really obvious in Egypt. I mean, when you walk here in the United States, you really don't notice it that much. You have to talk to people, and they will tell you their story about, you know, how hard to get a job and how hard to live the American dream. But in Egypt, you really can't see it because the employment rate is really high. So activists, they were really surprised to see that happening in the United States. They thought, you know, the American dream, and you can do whatever you want, and you really can get rich overnight, but that's not really the case.
And it's happening here too.
Yeah, it is happening, and people actually fighting pretty much for the same thing, you know, social justice, equality in pay, and getting really basic right. And so they were amazed, and they were really happy to see that something like that happening in the United States. And people here in the United States, they were standing in solidarity with people in Egypt, and vice versa. Like, I remember we actually had a couple of people with American flag and standing in solidarity in Egypt, in Tahrir Square, while people were like pepper spray at some UC Davis or something. And that was really shocking for them, for the Egyptian, because they didn't know that the police here can be that brutal with like peaceful protest. When I went to Egypt the first time in March 2011, there weren't really big rallies, but I experienced the big rallies in November. Like November 18, there was like a really big march from all over the country, marching to big squares, whether in Alexandria, Suez, Upper Egypt, or in Cairo. So in the beginning, it was on Friday, so we went to the prayer at one of the mosques close to the pyramid. Then somebody said, it's like, okay, we're going down to Tahrir, please come support us. We are asking for, you know, social justice. We are asking for all the activists to be released who are detained and fairly and trialed before military trial. and we would like to ask for the SCAF, which is a Security Council of the Supreme Court. They were appointed by Mubarak to take care of the country when he stepped down. Because they're not doing really good, and they're just really targeting activists. I mean, when I was there, they were detaining over 1,800 activists since the revolution, okay? And military trials, they just put them through military trial from 5 to 10 years right away. You know, within a week you can be trialed and put away. So anyway, we were like 50 of us, and we start walking towards the next neighborhood, and the neighborhoods are really close to each other in Cairo. And then we gained more, like 100 people, and then after like half an hour, you couldn't even see the beginning or the end of the march. By the time you go to Tahrir Square, the number is huge. You gain momentum through walking through all this neighborhood, and people actually come and participate and chant and ask for, like, you know, down with the military ruler and all this stuff. It's amazing. I can't put it in words how it feels to be in one of those big protests. I mean, in the November 18th, they asked for a 1 million man march. I'm pretty sure they got more than 2 million, because Tahrir Square, you couldn't even walk through it. It was like shoulder to shoulder, and Tahrir Square is a really big square. The role of women, I mean, there is a lot of women activists in Egypt, and here the media kind of betrays that activists in Egypt trying to push the women role and push women activists aside. That is not true. I mean, yeah, it's true with Muslim Brotherhood. They really kind of anti-women. They kind of want to keep women covered and put away at home, which is really terrible. But women are, you know, they're fighting. I've seen them on the street all the time in Egypt. They're always working in to galvanize their base. You see women marches as well, because, you know, in Egypt they don't walk really mixed together, because they don't like, they're afraid of some kind of sexual harassment, but I haven't seen any, and I haven't seen anybody complain about it. So you'll see a group of men walking, and you see a group of women walking as well, doing the protest. And you see doctor, nurses in Tahrir field hospitals, and women handing out like masks, because, you know, all the tear gas, spraying solution to kind of neutralize the tear gas on your face. So, and they're out there, they're, you know, they're chanting, their voices heard.
أول الضرب ما كناش قاعدين في مكان مستقر، كنا أنا وزمايلي المسعفين قاعدين في مكان اللي هو في الصينية في الميدان، وبنسعف وحاطين الشنط جنبنا بتاع الإسعاف.
It's perfect for women in the Middle East. It's a long way to get to the point where there is absolute equality between men and women. But you gotta face it, I mean, there is no absolute equality here in the United States or even some other country. Women is still 75% to men in salary, and there is a lot of repression in women from, like, the Republican Party, how they just want to control women's body, don't want to give them the right to choose, and it's really terrible, you know, if you look at it here. So in Egypt it's a different problem, like women have different problems than what women have here in America. And yes, it will take them a little work to get the right in order, and it's a work in progress. The revolution never ended in Egypt.
And can a woman give a speech and men sit and look and cheer at her when she's giving, you know, in the same way?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I have seen women standing in the middle of the square and they're actually talking specifically. I have seen a lot of conversation between women and men talking about, you know, different opinion and what they want versus what men want. And again, like, a revolution did not stop, did not end on February 11 when Mubarak stepped down. revolution is continuing. And with what we're seeing with the presidential election, I don't want to be speculating here, but I can tell you the choices we left with as an activist and revolutionary in Egypt is really terrible. We have somebody from the old regime, Ahmed Shafiq, who already said that if he was elected to become president, he will ban completely any protest. That's the end of it. You're not going to be able to protest in Egypt if he is the president. And you get somebody like Mohammed Morsi from the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a complete nutcase. He wanted to cover women and keep them at home because he thinks that will open a lot of employment for men, which I think is really sexist. First of all, covering women and putting them at home waiting for like to get married and stuff, that's absolutely terrible.
What do you think the future holds, the near future for Egypt?
I think we're gonna see a revolution happening. We're gonna witness another a continuous revolution in Egypt. I know that people, a lot of activists, they were boycotting the presidential elections, they were boycotting the parliament election, because how can you have a fair election under an old regime? Like, how can you do that? There was a lot of fraud in the parliament election. I saw it as you're not supposed to be promoting any party during, there is like a silence. As soon as the voting booths open, you're not supposed to promote or talk about any other party. People who are actually giving you flyer look like your ballot, you know, the ballot you actually vote on, with everything checked for their member. You're not supposed to be doing that. They were giving people bribe, like a lot of poor neighborhood, because you know, in Egypt it's like 40% of the Egyptian living under poverty line. So they will go to the poor neighborhood and give them, like, you know, sugar, rice and some grocery, and ask them to go and vote for certain person, and people did, because, you know, so it's a bribe, you know, you're bribing that person. And there was a lot of casting vote for absentee, like people who didn't even go to vote, they were actually voting for them. So how excuse me, for activists, how can you go and vote in so-called democratic election where all this fraud is going on, with the military, the SCAF is still in power? That's not democratic election. That's not what the activists went in January 25th, 2011 to protest for.
So how can people find out more about you and your movie?
You go to behindtherevolution.com and you will find my Twitter feed, you will find my Facebook page. You also will find the link on IndieFlix to watch Egypt, the story behind the revolution. And you will be able also to see the progress on the film I'm working on, which is Stories from Tahrir. And I hope to hear from you.
Any last words? Last comments?
Good luck with Occupy Wall Street. I'm actually part of it as well. And I live in San Francisco and I go to Oakland, film all the protests there. I was there in May 1st. It was absolutely wonderful. I mean, we didn't get really large turnout in San Francisco, but in Oakland it seemed like they got a couple of thousand of people to come down and protest. And I'm looking forward to September. I know there is a big Occupy Wall Street protest gonna come up in the summer and after the summer. So I can't wait for that. And you know, keep watching for Egypt, because now the news here is just stopped completely kind of reporting on Egypt. We're still fighting, we're still struggling, and wish us luck. Thank you.
كلنا لما نزلنا يوم 18 لرفض وثيقه السلمي، وده كان النزول. كان قبلنا وبعدنا في الشهداء والمصابين بتوع الثوره معتصمين بشكل سلمي جدا، وما كانوش حتى موقفين الطريق على عكس اعتصاماتنا احنا. ورغم كده تم ضربهم وسحلهم، وده اللي استفزنا كلنا وخلانا نزلنا نأيدهم، وبعدين بدأ الضرب فينا كلنا.
الناس كانت قاعده في الميدان مفيش حد لا في شارع، يعني ما جبناش سيره دلوقتي شارع محمد محمود ولا وزاره الداخليه ولا اي حاجه. تم فض الاعتصام الساعه 5 ل 10 5 ل 5 بواسطه قوات الشرطه العسكريه والامن المركزي بالقوه الغاشمه. يعني فعلا كلمه القوه الغاشمه دي انا عرفت يوميها يعني ايه قوه غاشمه.
في يوم 19 كنا عند مجمع التحرير، جات لنا قنبلتين غاز علينا مباشرة من مجمع التحرير، وواحدة زميلتنا أصيبت باختناق شديد جدا، وجرينا واضطرينا ننقل المستشفى الميداني ناحية عمر مكرم، المستشفى اللي هي في المسجد اللي جنب شارع محمد محمود تم هدمها مرتين.
أول الضرب ما كناش قاعدين في مكان مستقر، كنا انا وزمايلي المسعفين قاعدين في مكان اللي هو في الصينيه في الميدان، وبنسعف وحاطين الشنط جنبنا بتاع الاسعاف، ولقينا واحنا بنسعف الحالات وهم يعني نايمين جنبنا، لقيت يعني قنبله غاز مسيل للدموع بيني وبين الحاله. يعني ما كنتش قادره، لدرجه ان انا جريت وسبت الشنط بتاعتي وسبت الحاله وسبت كل حاجه وجريت، لان احنا كنا فعلا هنفطس من الغاز.
حد بقى يبرر لي دول يستاهلوا كده ليه؟ وحد يقول لي بعد ما الناس دي ماتت، لو ادعينا زورا وبهتانا ان هم ماتوا بالخطأ، لو الناس دي ماتت ايه اللي يخليك يا شرطة عسكرية ويا قوات داخلية بعد ما يموت الراجل والشاب من دول تجرجره في الارض وترميه في الزبالة، وانه لما يقع قدامك تعيد التأكيد على موته بانك تقعد تضربه بالحديد على دماغه ضربة واثنين وثلاثة؟ ده معناه ايه؟
اللي حصل في محمد محمود بيتحمله المجلس العسكري بشكل كامل، مش كبش فدا عصام شرف، واحنا عارفين كويس قوي ان عصام شرف وحكومته ما كانوش الا مجرد سكرتاريا المجلس العسكري. فانا بحمل المجلس العسكري المسؤوليه كامله، وشايف ان تحديدا الشرطه العسكريه بقياده اللواء حمدي بدين ارتكبت الكثير من الجرائم التي ترقى الى درجه ان هم يجب ان يحاكموا كما يحاكم مبارك وحبيب العدلي، قيادات الامن المركزي وقيادات الداخليه قبل الثوره، يعني ملهاش حل تاني.
رافضون لعسكر كاذبون، كلامهم كله كذب في كذب، كله ضحك على الدقون، بنتقتل لما بنرفض او نترمى في السجون، مفيش حاجه اتغيرت يا مصر يلا قوم. رافضون لعسكر كاذبون، كلامهم كله كذب في كذب، كله ضحك على الدقون، بنتقتل لما بنرفض او نترمى في السجون، مفيش حاجه اتغيرت يا مصر يلا قوم.
ما انت عارف اني عارف انك انت اللي في الورطه،